Hi, this is Veronica of Paint My Moment again, and as promised, I'm going to give a video on how I start my painting projects, including the graphite transfer, the paint sketch, and the base painting. So we'll go ahead and get started. As you see, we've moved locations a bit with a different setup, but we will adapt and make it work just fine here. I've collected numerous tips and tricks over the years, and some of the best ones I use are the ones I learned from Boris Vallejo and Julie Bell, renowned fantasy illustrators. Now, first tip is that when I do a new painting for a client and such, or just any particular paint project based on an image or photo, I don't redraw the image. It takes a long time to do it that way. And I find it just easier to transfer the image, especially if it's my own photo, because of the matter, it is my image, or one I'm given permission to, say with a client, so you don't have to redraw the image and save time if you don't need to. Second tip, when you do a printout to transfer onto your artboard, try and make it fit as close to the item you're going to be working on as possible. Now, I have a 6x12 board. The image here is actually 6x12, but I shortened it by 10 inches because I want a little bit of clearance on either side. That way, when I sit up on the top, the width will fit, but not the height. So with this, I have something to work with. And with that, this is the image we will be working with. Upcoming little project here, little chickies, obviously a cute subject matter. We're going to be working with, here's our materials. We have a 6x12 gessoed artboard, already primed. This is what we will be using as our medium. You will also need a pair of scissors, the graphite stick mentioned in the previous video, along with a pencil, regular, mechanical, does not matter so long as you can apply even or heavy pressure, and some painter's tape. This will encompass the first part of the image transfer, which we will work on first. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on the graphite transfer. First, obviously, you take your printout image, and you will first kind of line it up with the board you're going to be using, or canvas, to see where it fits on there. If it fits just fine, then you can put the graphite in the back and get started. Otherwise, you figure out where you're going to put it, line it up, and if you need to trim up some excess, you can do so. Just kind of turn it here, take your scissors, and voila, you now have one edge that lines up with the top here. Then just kind of center it as much as you can. I deliberately cut off these edges to give me a bit more room, but now I know it will fit just nice. And with this, that's where you know where you will tape it. Alright, with that, you now have your cut piece here. We'll just move the board out of the way a little, turn it over. Now with the graphite stick we had before, we will now cover the area that we will trace over with the graphite stick. I prefer to use this 10B softness graphite stick. It covers very well, it gets nice and dark. Although you can use your regular graphite pencils, especially anything 6B or softer works really well in terms of graphite softness. And it doesn't have to be a graphite stick, it could be a regular pencil, although you will have to pause every now and then to sharpen depending on how much you're covering over it. But you see, this goes on relatively quickly and it's nice and dark. Do be aware of the surface that you are working on. If there's like any grooves or grain to work on, it might show up, but it's not so bad, just as long as you make sure you get everything covered. You don't have to go all the way to the edge. It just kind of depends on how much image you're using and how detailed it is. In this case, I don't have to go too detailed, so I don't have to go all the way to the edges for anything. You just want to make sure that you cover enough, so that way when you turn it over, you can tell, usually through the light, that it covers everything you're going to actually trace over. Because obviously you don't have to draw in that background since you're just going to paint it that color. Naturally, you always want to go over where the images are that you're tracing over, so that way you don't overdo it. or not have enough graphite. I find that going diagonally here causes the least amount of drag, less chance of ripping or catching on your paper. Okay, let's take a look here. And it looks as though it just got a little bit more up top here. Right in the middle, a little more down here. Start over again and we can compare, and by what I can tell, I have managed to cover everything I'm going to do. So you can put your graphite stick away and line it up on the board. Alrighty, and with that, just kind of wipe away any excess material on things. Grab a pencil of any type. I prefer using a mechanical pencil because that's just me. And what you want to do is take also a bit of painter's tape, rip off a little piece, secure it more or less evenly. I like to center mine like so. Get one side, take another piece, secure it here. Try and keep it nice and even as much you can. So that way it lays pretty flat. And when you're ready, take your pencil, it could be regular pencil or mechanical, apply medium to firm pressure, and start going over the images you're going to transfer. In this case, I prefer to start in the middle on smaller pieces and work my way out. On a larger piece, I definitely prefer to start in like one corner and then work my way out. Now, one way I tend to do this is I will contour an image, then get some of the shapes inside, such as like shadows and highlights, so that it helps remind me where they are. Now with this printout, it's kind of faint where some of those are, but I just need to get the basic idea of where they are, because I'll paint them in later with more detail and I'll have the original image on my screen to get a better view of. Because you don't have to go too detailed with these unless of course you want to. Although do be wary of the surface texture you work on when you do transfer. If say you had like canvas or any kind of material that has a bit of tooth or texture to it, your transfer image might not show up as well. For instance, my artboard here is nice and smooth, and so you see it transfers that graphite very well when I go over it. But with other material that can be a little bit more coarse or grainy or just have some texture to it, it won't show up as well, and you would need more graphite and firmer pressure in order to get that to show up. And you would probably have to double check every now and then to make sure it is showing up on the other side. But do try not to look too often. Try and be assured of where your placement is, because if you move it too often, odds are you'll probably put it in the wrong area. And you don't want that. As you see, I'm trying to get both contour of the image as well as certain shapes and forms in terms of highlights and shadows. This is a pretty simple image, so it shouldn't take too long. Don't forget where I have my bits of hay. And also, if you have a image that you're transferring that has a lot of ink on it, do bear in mind you might get your hands kind of dirty as you go. I was working on a big project previously that was not only very large, but just covered in ink residue, and it was impossible to do any of the transfer without basically getting my hands really dirty. And I have to watch it regularly just to get it clean and keep going. But usually these are pretty simple procedures. They don't take too long, especially for an image like this, which isn't too complicated. Naturally, it gets longer the bigger or more complicated it gets. But you see, we are getting close to finishing. It doesn't have to be precise either. It's not as if you're going for super detail. You just want to, sometimes, especially vague backgrounds and everything, you just need to get the general reference, because you'll be painting in the details later. You just want the general shape. So don't worry about being perfectly even or have to worry about erasing and starting over, although that is an option. Do be aware every time you erase, you leave a bit of eraser residue, which makes it a little bit harder and a little bit messy to draw again because it tends to smear. But it is possible though. If you're willing to put in the effort, it's totally fine to do so. Getting close to the end here. Applying nice firm pressure. And let us, a little bit more here, just get an idea where the eye is. Transfer over and there we go. We now have an image transfer that is good enough to work from. If you want, you can try and add a few more details here and there, like, oh, let's just say we'll just add a little bit here and a little bit there. But you don't have to if you don't want to. You can always use the original image as reference to keep by your side or on your screen in order to reference from. But I'll go ahead and be satisfied with this and flip it over, and voila, we now have a graphite transfer. From here on, then we will do the paint sketch where we basically paint over this with burnt sienna to kind of lock it in. Then I will do the base painting for you. All right, stay tuned.